Well, it's Prime Minister Modi's biggest diplomatic challenge yet. India's bid to join the coveted nuclear supplies group will be decided in the next 2 days as its members meet in Seoul. The biggest hurdle to India's entry remains China, while countries like the US and France has gone all out to push India's case. Here's the report.
Uncertainty hangs over India's fate to be part of the coveted nuclear supplies group. This will be the Modi government's biggest diplomatic challenge yet. The 2-day annual plenary session of the NSG begins in Seoul today, during which India's application for membership may come up for deliberation. Foreign Secretary S. Jaishankar arrived in the capital of South Korea to lobby with members to boost India's prospects of getting membership. He had earlier made a quiet visit to Beijing, apparently to seek support for New Delhi's membership. China continued to make ambivalent statements on India's bid for membership. On the eve of NSG's plenary, China said on Wednesday that India's entry into the bloc was not on the agenda as New Delhi was not a signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty.
你提到如果中国不阻挡，这个阻挡这个词儿呢，我觉得用的不妥当，因为 NSG 集团议程上迄今没有涉及到非 NPT 缔约国加入申请这样的议题，所以呢不存在所谓的阻挡和不阻挡的问题。但是我们之前也多次说过了，对于如何处理非 NPT 缔约国这一类国家加入 NSG 的问题呢，各方都是十分的重视的。
But why is India's membership in the NSG so important? Membership will help India significantly expand its atomic energy sector. NSG members are allowed to trade in and export nuclear technology. India's bid for full membership, if granted, would tip the balance of power in South Asia against Pakistan, whose own application has been backed by China.
This NSG membership will open doors for India, particularly with regard to energy efficient nuclear technologies, nuclear power plants, and also will create a good research methodology with regard to medical facilities.
India needs massive power production. Therefore, for India, nuclear energy is imperative. That is why we are trying to enter into the NSG. With that, India will also be able to make its own domestic nuclear power plants and sell it to the neighboring countries. Both Bangladesh, Sri Lanka have already shown interest.
All eyes are on the South Korean capital to see if India is able to garner mandatory consensus of all existing nations as the plenary session kicks off today. Bureau Report, India Today.
All right, so today and tomorrow will be that key meet. It's already begun in Seoul. But before, of course, we discuss that in detail, here's a look at why this membership for India is so important. Number one, it will help India expand. This is particularly in the atomic energy sector. Also, of course, India will be allowed to trade and export nuclear technology. It will also help gain crucial power against Pakistan, which is why we've been seeing that opposition coming from the country as well. It will help India achieve a goal of producing 40% clean energy, something that Sushma Swaraj also spoke about. Also, it's an access to advanced technology at a much cheaper rate. That's why we're seeing India push for an NSG membership. Also, this particularly means that we can block Pakistan's entry into the nuclear suppliers group by getting in there before them. And this is the importance, of course, of India's NSG membership, of gaining that membership over the next 2 days. We'll have to wait and watch to see if that happens or not. Executive Editor Gaurav Sawant now joining us live with the latest, with his perspective on really what are the chances of India getting this membership. Gaurav, over the next 2 days, what do you think will happen?
So it will go down to the wire. India working the phone lines, and not just India, India's friends, the United States. United States in 2008, then President George Bush, for that waiver, one-time waiver for India, he spoke to Hu Jintao, then Chinese president, and that tipped the scales in India's favor. Can the same happen in 2016? Will President Barack Obama do the same with President Xi Jinping? It remains to be seen. Does US enjoy the same kind of leverage? We are hoping they do, but not just the US. We haven't put all our eggs in the US basket. Russia, President Putin, he's said that they will work on China, they will work on other countries to ensure India comes on board. President Putin feels India should be there. The US, the UK, France, Russia, they're all on board. Will China be the only country? Because Turkey is also saying they have nothing against India, but they also want Pakistan to be on board. But there's a difference there. India and Pakistan's track records, as you well know, Akshata, are very, very different. Pakistan has an obnoxious track record when it comes to nuclear proliferation. They're the nuclear Walmart. They've been smuggling nuclear weapons left, right and center to North Korea, to Iran. And the world knows it. And it's not that they did it earlier. They are still doing it. There's a US report that says that they are still doing it. So why would anyone want Pakistan to be a part of this group unless Pakistan comes clean? Also, there's a procedure to be followed. India's done that. Pakistan still to do that.
And you know, when we talk about Pakistan, we saw the NSJ Pak, NSA, of course, making a statement saying that possibly there's a greater agenda here with regards to India, and US is backing for India's membership bid. We've seen Pakistan come out very strongly opposing it. And also, as we pointed out, the importance of India gaining that membership is to ensure that we provide that solid roadblock to Pakistan entering the NSG group. So what do you really make of this opposition? Do you think that there's a larger agenda behind Pakistan actually coming out and saying that, look, we are against India joining the NSG?
So as far as India blocking Pakistan is concerned, India is not a part of NSG. India cannot block Pakistan. Sushma Swaraj has made it very clear, even when India gets on the nuclear high table, India will do nothing. Every case will be decided on merit. If Pakistan makes the cut, those 48 countries, or if India makes the cut at whatever stage, then the 49 countries will take such a decision on merits. Does Pakistan have the track record? Unfortunately, no. Pakistan has been a nuclear proliferator and a bad one at that. That's point one. Point two, when General Janjua talks about a grand design, he's talking about US not wanting China to be the sole superpower in Asia, or perhaps the only rival to the United States. So, but Barack Obama said that in no uncertain terms, that he wants India to be the pivot to Asia. India is the linchpin for all operations, not just in the Indian Ocean region, but also in the Indo-Pacific Ocean is what they're calling it. So India has a much bigger role to play. China wants to stem India's rise, and perhaps that is why China is blocking it. But China also needs to realize, in case China does that, there's personal chemistry between Prime Minister Narendra Modi, President Xi Jinping. What role will that play? That's point one. And point two, if China antagonizes us, is it good for relations between the two countries?
And India is doing all it can really to get China on board at this point. But really, let's take a look at what's happening in Seoul. The plenary meet has begun. And remember, India Today is the first Indian channel to get images of the plenary meet in Seoul. The meeting began earlier this morning, and India Today Deputy Editor Smita Sharma was at the convention center to cover the meeting. Smita also managed to have a word with the hosts, but with the controversy surrounding India's entry into the group and China's opposition, the diplomats preferred to maintain a rather stoic silence.
Indian membership will be on the agenda, sir. So
let's go across to Smita Sharma now, joining us live from Seoul. Smita, we've seen you, of course, trying to take questions from the hosts. They weren't, of course, willing to answer those questions. But take us through what's happening so far in the plenary meet. We know on the agenda is the fact that new members could join the NSG. But when really is it expected to come up? Will we expect that tomorrow, or will it happen through the course of the 2 days?
There was that, in fact, passing remark made in the opening remarks by the Korean Foreign Minister, where he said that amidst the challenges that lie ahead as far as NSG's progress is concerned, one of the challenges, of course, is to try and build consensus on the membership issues so that NSG, in fact, grows in a way. But he did not lay down any more specifics, whether they were talking about NPT signatories for joining NSG or the non-NPT signatories, including India, Pakistan, as well as contenders like Israel. Those steps, in fact, right behind me, I'm at the hotel where the plenary session is on. These steps lead up to that, in fact, conference hall where the opening remarks were made as the plenary session got underway. Of course, post those remarks, media was asked to move out of that room. But the Indian delegation not yet here. What I'm learning from my sources is that at the moment, Indian Foreign Secretary S. Jaishankar, who is leading the charge here, is actually holding a meeting with the Indian team that comprises of the Joint Secretary Amandeep Gill as well on nuclear issues. The Indian envoy here, Vikram Doraiswamy, he's also huddled up in those meetings because they will be looking for those occasions. At the moment, of course, the Chinese delegation is an insider. It's inside the room at that plenary hall.
Okay.
But they will be looking for these occasions to try and touch base and contact with these negotiators, also depending on the kind of signals that flow in from Tashkent following the Narendra Modi Xi Jinping meeting later this afternoon.
Right, so that's the latest from Seoul. Smita, stay on with us. Let's also, of course, get you a conversation that Karan Thapar had with former diplomats Rakesh Sood and Satyabrat Pal on why really it's important for India to be a part of the NSG as well as the decision-making process. This is, of course, with regards to Jai Shankar. Also, we spoke to him about what it will mean for India if it's left out. Listen in.
Rakesh, so let's start with the question, is it really in India's interest to join the NSG before we come to an assessment of the likelihood of success at Seoul tomorrow and day after? Why do you believe it's important for India to join the NSG?
Well, in practical terms, to further our civil nuclear cooperation, we don't need to be a member of the NSG, because we have a special waiver which India was granted in 2008. And pursuant to that, we have signed nearly a dozen agreements pertaining to civilian nuclear cooperation, supply of uranium as a fuel, and so on.
Precisely why I asked the question. So why is it so important to join?
However, what we have done is we have declared voluntary adherence to NSG. In other words, were NSG to change its decisions tomorrow, were it to add new materials to its control lists or new procedures, we would automatically, voluntarily adhere to it. To be part of that decision making, if that is important for us, that is the key. That is why we are seeking the membership.
So what you're saying
It's
is because we've committed ourselves to accept any changes the NSG makes, even when we're not members of the NSG,
right.
It's better to be inside, involved in the changes, because we're committed to accepting them.
Absolutely.
Satyabrat Pal, you've argued almost the precise opposite in a recent piece for thewire.in. You say India's manic quest to join the NSG is misplaced. Why do you believe that?
Well, I agree completely with Rakesh that you don't need it because of the special waiver. And what are you going to get from it? As Rakesh says, if new rules are going to be made, if the old rules are going to be changed. Well, the old rules have been changed. And the NSG changes its rules about once every 15 years. And the changes were last made in 2013. They introduced a rather fundamental change which altered the terms of the waiver that we got. Now it's going to be absolutely impossible for us, and that is the key change.
And that change was a denial of enrichment and reprocessing facilities to a country like India.
Because we are not a member of the NPT, and if we became a member of the NSG, we'd be the only country not a member of the NPT. So that having been already instituted in the rules of the NSG, circulated by the IAEA, whether we become a member or not makes no difference at all.
And therefore you're saying that this quest and the effort we're putting into it, to quote the headline of your article, is misplaced.
Completely, absolutely.
Dhruv Jaishankar, how do you respond to the argument you've heard from Satyabrat Pal that first of all, India has nothing to gain by joining the NSG after securing a waiver in 2008, and secondly, although he hasn't quite made that point but he's made it elsewhere, the very process of trying to join is now reinserting the hyphen between India and Pakistan, which the waiver in 2008 had removed. In other words, we're undoing the good work we did in 2008.
Well, there are two parts to that question. On the first part, just to address some of the importance, I would actually say the importance is perhaps greater. Largely it's political, as Ambassador Sood said, but I think even the practical consequences. Does India want to be content just abiding by rules created by others? Or does it want to actually be active in shaping those rules? And I think India, given its stature, given its history, given its the steps that it has taken already, certainly sees itself as a rule maker now. So I think that is a fundamental difference. This is why membership is partly important. The second is, in fact, India has the NSG was created after India's 1974 nuclear test, and there is a legacy of sanctions. Effectively, joining the NSG is a form of sanctions proofing. And I think that is something important to stress. There's also the political argument. and that's one that I've made, which is even if you argue that the NSG itself is not that important, the fact that China is going to such extent, not just China, but China in particular, is going to such extent to block India is itself important. India needs to join simply because there is such vehement opposition to its inclusion. If it can't join this, how can India expect to join much more important forums of global governance?
Now, even as India's bid to join the nuclear suppliers group looms over Seoul, Prime Minister Modi will be visiting Tashkent, where India is expected to join another coveted international organization, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Here's a report of what's on the Prime Minister's agenda in the capital of Uzbekistan.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will arrive today in Tashkent, the capital of Uzbekistan, to attend the annual summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a China-dominated six-nation grouping. But what's on the Prime Minister's agenda? India, along with Pakistan, is set to be inducted as full members into the group, which mainly deals with issues relating to security and defense. With majority of the SCO countries having huge reserves of oil and gas, India is expected to get greater access to majority hydrocarbon projects in Central Asia after its entry into the bloc. India is also expected to explore ways to deepen security cooperation and intelligence sharing. With India's NSG bid looming, PM Modi is also likely to have a bilateral meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. In the meeting, PM Modi is expected to seek China's support for India's membership in the nuclear suppliers group. The Prime Minister is also expected to meet Vladimir Putin and the Kazakh President over the NSG entry issue. With the agenda set, PM's visit to the capital of Uzbekistan is expected to be a crucial one for India. Bureau Report, India Today.